Good morning, afternoon, day, or night, whatever time it might be for you guys. I am your host, the Rental Man Buck. This is my 1972 John Deere 56. And these are the parts we're gonna have to install to get this mower running. And to get all of these parts installed, we're gonna need to take ourselves a little bit of action. Let's get into the video, and I'll break down with you guys what the project's gonna be today. To make this project as quick and as smooth sailing as possible, there's a video in your top right that you guys can find to the recap video, which is, right there. And it will tell you guys the history and the build up on the project of this mower. Our goal today, if we step onto the right, excuse my handwriting, I'm a lefty, we have to install our ignition coil. If you guys saw in that first little snippet where I said these are the parts, that first part is our ignition coil. Luckily, this motor has an external one. My original one had an internal one. It sucked. Number two though, we're gonna have to get our drive pulley installed. That is the secondary part. We're gonna have to make sure the spacing on our coil is correct, but if we don't have a drive pulley, the mower's not gonna drive at all. That was a fun part to track down. Thirdly, we're gonna get that drive belt back on for the first time in the Millennium. Once we get that motor mounted on, because I've already pre-drilled the holes in the chassis, we'll have to be able to get the motor on. Lastly, we're gonna have to get our air filter installed and also fill the motor with oil. This should not be that big of a problem, and our goal is to have, the mower running and driving, but that part has taken 5 years in the making. Let's get out to the garage, start working on our mower, and getting this project underway. And here it is in all of its glory. All I gotta do is this, don't need that right now because that's unimportant. But there's supposed to be an engine here. Okay, we need to get that engine worked on. The engine's currently sitting over on my table saw, as it's actually like the perfect engine stand to be working on. Also, fun fact today, this is what the air filter is supposed to look like on this thing, and this one kind of was, it was pretty much black, so I don't think it's gonna be breathing very much. This will definitely help, but let's tear this motor apart, all right? Get some time lapse in.
Jesse was born on a winter's night in the middle of a storm. The road was blocked, so Jesse was born in this old house. Raised on love in those sunny years when there was magic in the world. Her laughter traveled well across those hardwood floors.
Now that we're up on top of the motor, we have our magnet, which is going to, signal our coil to spark to the spark plug, which can't see it out of shot, but just ever so slightly below the block, there's our spark plug. The spec for a coil on this Tecumseh is supposed to be like a tenth to a 15,000th of an inch or something. It's like 0.01 or 0.015 is the distance gap that the coil is supposed to be to this magnet. I cannot find my gap tool to save my life, so what we're going to do is we're going to cheap out and see if this works. A razor blade is like 0.009. It's slightly thinner, but hey, if it works, then you save yourself. It takes 2 cents to buy one of these versus $4 at AutoZone. It's kind of difficult to see on these things sometimes. I think I installed it upside down. I installed it upside down. With the spark plug plugged in, we have one last wire that we need to attach to this before we start putting everything back up on top. That is our ignition kill switch. So this little green wire, it's got to hook up, right here, just like so. And it routes out to this. This is the wire that's going to come from my ignition key on the chassis of the mower. With that all lined up, let's get this thing put back together, and we'll move on to our next little segment.
She was on her way out the door while her clothes were drying on a line outside the porch.
From one quick run to the hardware store, I would have caught camera footage of this. I got the bolts, but the guy was in there helping the other guys out, and then he helped me out, and I just for privacy reasons, I kept the camera out of there. But if you guys would like to see more work on Project 56, and that does interest you, please Please consider possibly dropping a like and maybe even a subscribe on the video down below. We are on the race to 100,000 public subscribers by the end of this year. Project 56 is just the beginning of my real life content projects, and I hope it brings you guys a lot of joy. Let's head to the frame and get this motor mounted on. The thing I loved about the motor on the 56 is that even though this is a completely different engine and that it's the same company, it's actually really simple because the block sits in the body of the mower the exact same way that my previous one did. So the muffler's in the same spot, the drain hole's in the same spot, it's just bigger. The only thing that's different is the fuel tank's on the opposite side as well as the air filter. Here should be one. Find the hole, there's the hole. Way back in here should be number 3, just like that. You guys will have to excuse my slight camera position. I don't really have, how we say, the tools to really get shots like this. So we're gonna do our dangdest to see if we can really get this to look good for you. I wish I had 2 13mm wrenches though. That'd be really convenient right about now. I obviously did have to remount where the bolts for this go because the block is bigger than the previous engine. Not a big problem, but I'm just surprised that this motor fit in this frame as well as it did. Let's try that again. Well, that didn't work. Okay, take 2. I think that wrench just has a death wish out for me. And the last one. Why does it always have to be the last one's the hardest to get to when it comes to deforming your body? Okay, now that we have the pulley back on and everything is bolted down, the only thing that's not bolted down is the pulley itself. Using my lovely little impact here, just gonna slowly kind of find out where the bolt's at on the crank. Come on, you. There it goes. Bingo! Now all we should have to do is feed this wonderful belt up through here. I have to mosey my way over here because I can't seem to see it. So there's the engine. There's the transmission. Beautiful. And then there is the clutch one. Let's get this thing down off the jack stands. Start filling it up with the go-go juice. I do have to say I'm pretty well thoroughly impressed. Mint. Just realize this. I do not have my white cable from the other mower. So in order to get this safety switch for the key to go, I have to climb up on top of my red car and grab the ignition wire so we can plug that in. Heading over to the workbench now, guys. Here's our old ignition wire from the 56. I actually did replace this in the last video, but trim it back just a wee bit, like that. And then we'll also, I can't remember exactly what gauge of wire this is, but we'll just strip a little bit back, like so. And with my connector, which I'm actually going to do the heat shrink first, because you know we can get that on before anything else. Do not play with fire at home, kids. Always make sure you are careful with what you are doing, because all it takes is one quick burn and ouchie, you're in the ER for burns, and that's not fun. So I'm just going to take a little bit of heat, like I said, heat shrink, make sure this thing is all nice and sealed up properly, and there you go. Still a wee bit hot, but now we have our new connector to the ignition. All we gotta do, plug it into that bad boy. Now I know a handful of you guys are always asking me, Buck, are you a real farmer, or what do you do? I'm gonna tell you guys again, I'm not a full-blown mechanic. I don't know really anything. I've taught myself a lot of what I actually do. So if you think about any of this and go, this seems way out of whack, way out of order, just remember, this is a kid that literally is just messing around with stuff until he finds out. But we got some standard 4-cycle engine oil. All we gotta do is put this right down the hole, even though I'm missing about half of it. And the block should be pretty much empty. So this will probably take the whole cord. One thing I like about this motor versus my other one is that there actually is a dipstick that you can really use. The other one had a dipstick that was like this long, but this one you actually have to drop it down into the engine. So I like that. Still not on the stick yet. Could I use a funnel? Yes. Do I want to go get it right out of my drawer that's directly to my left? No, that'd be too convenient. Plus, I'm already down far enough that I don't really need it anymore. I put a little bit too much in there, but you know what? It'll burn itself off. I'm not too worried about that. Who knows how long it's been since this motor's actually run, but it needs some go-go juice. So let's get some gas in it. I really just want to get one of those gas cans that, you know, it gets the regular spout that no one should be using, but we all know that it spills a lot less than these things. Let's see, let's turn on the key and give it a few pulls. Well, we got nothing so far. This definitely is a heavier engine to pull over than my previous one, but not going to give up yet. If you guys do not have one of these, I highly recommend looking into investing in one. This is a spark tester. You plug this side into your spark plug, and this side goes to your coil. And then if you do have spark, if this thing will focus, the inside here, this will light up. If we do have spark, there should be a light bulb in there, which we definitely have spark. We need fuel. So if the motor just needs to be primed, then that's okay. We can definitely figure that out. One way we can definitely get it kick-started is by putting some starter fluid into the air cleaner. I like the sounds of that. You know, I just realized something. You see this cable? Yeah, that's supposed to go to the throttle. It's probably what we got problems with. I'm gonna play around with this thing for a little bit. It'll go, but I'm also gonna open up the garage because it stinks in here. Gave it a wee bit more gas, and I'm just gonna kind of keep pulling it because I think the motor just needs to prime. It just hasn't had fuel in that thing and it's trying to pull from the tank. Some more encouragement. It's almost there. You. Stop it. Don't. Got to fix this. I don't know what's going on yet. Probably flooded it. And yeah, I think that's kind of relating to our problem. So let's look into that little issue. Hey Cam, why not use the smarter tools? It gets the job done a lot faster. If any of you guys have not checked out this DeWalt ratcheting screwdriver, I know other companies make them, but I got this thing from Home Depot, pretty dang cheap, and it's been one of the best screwdrivers I've ever owned in my life. So if you're looking for a good screwdriver, definitely check out that DeWalt ratcheting one. It's worth the money, believe me. On this, the plates to actually mount the screws are on the back side. I need the cable to go from this way to get the motor to run correctly. I drilled a hole in the plate so that way when I very, very slowly with my drill almost tap it in with the screw itself and make some threads, then this can be able to securely hold my throttle cable, so then this has the ability to move where it's supposed to, just instead of it moving from here, it's moving from here. Let's try that one on for size. There it goes. Oh yeah, that is perfect. There we go. Okay, moment of truth. Did my fix work? So if we put this in this, just like that, and then this, routing underneath, through the floor just a wee bit, I think this should work. My name is Coyote. Y-E Coyote. Genius. Now that we're back over to the carburetor, I kind of want to see what was going on, if there was something that was out of the ordinary for this, and if there's anything I can really do to fix it. So we have our float, which seems to be in, you know, pretty good condition. I don't really see anything too wrong with that. I wouldn't think this thing would be clogged. I mean, like I said, it was running, so I mainly just kind of want to clean it out, just so we knew it wasn't being flooded. Get some of the gunk out of here. But the carb's been cleaned out, so I'm going to at least put everything back together, and we'll see if we can't get this mower running. After what's most certainly felt like about an hour or so, I think I finally got this thing figured out. I had to do quite a bit of modifications to my air intake because the paddle that was back on this throttle cable, when this thing rotates and pushes it, there's a little flap back behind there that's what activates your air one. Well, it wasn't making enough contact, so I got the throttle one figured out with the spring, but this one needed some adjusting, and if we put up our throttle now, both valves work correctly. So now if I put everything back together and we get this thing filled up with a little bit of fuel, not a lot, just a little. I learned my lesson last time. We can check to make sure if there's any leaks, but also we can see if this thing will finally run. Okay, with everything put back in and tightened down, let's see if she's got a little bit of life in her. Getting warmer. We are getting warmer, folks. Woo! Right now it's just blowing through that oil that I think I put in a little bit too much of, so once it burns through that, it should be just fine. So, we're going to keep on going with this until, you know, it burns off all that steam, and then we'll kind of see if we can check in a little bit. That's great. We got a motor, and it runs, and it's on a mower. So there's hope.
A few moments later.
Jeez. It is one thing after another. I'm gonna shoot something. And that's how you do that. Quick, adapt, achieve, overcome. Put in a new screw, sawed off the end, filed it to make it smooth, and did a new tied off knot as well as burn the ends. That way it does. Fix that. Don't ever give up, guys. Please, whatever you do, just keep fighting. Let's try this again. Well, that didn't work. Third time's the charm. I didn't put the screw in this time. Well, that's at least good. We have life. Alrighty then, everybody. It's officially now the next day, and I wanted to give you guys a full little walkthrough of everything that kind of has gone into this project so far. Once I established that this mower threw about every single curveball that I possibly could have imagined. I snapped a spark plug, I broke this reel cord 3 times, which we obviously saw that just a little bit earlier. And then I realized I didn't have spark at all. So I took this thing apart. I'll take you guys over to the workbench because I want to show you kind of what I ended up doing. Plus I'll show you down in here on the internals to get an idea of what happened. And we'll try and get you up to speed a little bit because the mower, I finally got it running. The mower runs, it drives, not great, but it's a great building block to getting that first goal on our whiteboard checked off and done. If you're wondering what this is my 90s Oldsmobile Tornado. I just realized that it'd be a little bit easier to set the camera up over there than to have, you know, the camera looking in the same place every time. Let's show you guys what we did to this thing, and we'll move on to the next segment. Moving back over to the workbench, I know it just looks like a bunch of random parts, and to be honest, yes, quite frankly it is, but There's a lot of parts that I tried to fabricate off of what was my 56's 7 horsepower Tecumseh, because the carburetor, while it was pretty much the same shape, was just a bit smaller. I could not get this motor to run for my life of me, and I almost gave up yesterday. It took about 6 hours to get this thing going. I took the carburetor apart, tried sifting back and forth between different floats, different bowls, different screws, and here's what our situation looks like currently. I'm using the old 56 float bowl and the idle screw on the bottom so I can actually adjust how much fuel is going into the motor, and I still can't figure out why this thing is leaking. All of my seals are properly corrected, so it shouldn't be dropping anything else. I put some plastic weld on my air intake to make sure this had a proper seal. We'll also have gaskets coming for the air intake and the exhaust intake, or, you know, where suck, squeeze, bang, blow process happens, so right there. And then this will all end up being replaced. On top of all that, made a little trip to Tractor Supply. That being this very, very nice vinyl seat. It's a bit too big for what I'm doing, but it gets the point across. And you know, I kind of looked at it. It's missing a very important decal in the back. I might talk to Marty about that. Maybe put a little Prairie State action right there. Well, let's give this thing a little bit of fuel from my only dirty on the outside milk jug, since that's just kind of why I've been storing the gas in, just so it has fuel. And we will see if this thing will get a little bit of a pop off. If I need to put some starter fluid in it, that'll be all right. But in theory, this thing should run, it should drive, it should get the point across, and we can go for a little bit of a ride. And let's give her a pull. Helps when you choke it. Actually, I'd better check. Is that working underneath here? It is not. Mint. What happened to you? I'm not sure if it's the fuel fumes that are getting to my head that's made me somewhat smarter, but while taking a look at our parts for the carburetor, I took off the bottom half of the bowl, and then I realized, looking at the float that came in this one, I'm not sure if you guys are going to be able to see that, that's full of fluid. So, in my professional opinion, that's probably why the float was not shutting off the fuel going to the carburetor, because the carburetor kept leaking out the top. Looking underneath the one on my 56, you guys can see that this little ring right here, there's a gasket that goes around the top. This is the input from the fuel cap. So when the float fills up, there's this little thing that goes right into that hole, and it plugs the fuel. It tells the sender is the simplest way of, hey, no more fuel goes in here. And the rest of the fuel comes up through the center. I think this wasn't getting properly shut off, meaning it was overflowing to the top, which is what caused the leak on there. Then when I went down to the hardware store yesterday and I bought fuel lines, I couldn't remember if this was 5/16 or 1/4" fuel line. So I got both of them, put the bigger one on because the used fuel line looked like that. Well, my mind took that as that's 5/8. No, that's just a stretched out 1/4. So I'm going to put the correct fuel line on now. It's already cut to length. And I'm hoping that should fix my gas problem, because, you know, when you have the correct parts on and the correct sealing process, it should work. Might be a little hard to see, but our throttle cable, I have to actually go up into the steering column and underneath the mower to check this out. For some odd reason, this cable's not pushing in and out like it was supposed to anymore. And I think once I figure that problem out, part of the problem is that I have to have this cable routed a certain way. And I think if I could do it correctly, between the intake and the exhaust valve, I can put that right in there. And then I'll route it up on top so it can mount a little bit higher and have a little bit smoother of an access way, so it doesn't have to worry about being kinked.
Like a small fish in a big pond. I think I go back where I came from, where everybody knows my name. My friends are still the same. I guess the slow life hit me just right, like a bonfire on a cold night. Hell, and you can keep your 9 to 5, happy with the simple life.
So after some severe modifications, I ended up taking out the entire deck engager assembly. which was one big bar that came across here. My throttle cable is this. I gotta feed it back through the frame on the back side. I think you guys are able to see that. So I was gonna run it underneath this clutch assembly stuff, but I think it would still kind of kink, so I'm gonna run this directly, just like it was, on top of everything, and instead of now having to go through all that weird contraption stuff, this cable should just be running freely underneath here, so we don't have an issue. Now when we run our throttle cable back up through the chassis, what I'm thinking I'm going to again do is see if I can put this right between these two, as that would be absolutely perfect positioning for this, but I might have to modify the muffler a little bit. All I got to do now is check on if my throttle input up on the steering column works again. Oh yeah, that's exactly what we needed it to do. So let's get our assembly bolted back up, put all of our stuff on, and I might be able to pull this one time. Well, slight problem. I may or may not have had enough gas to, you know, actually run the lawnmower, so we'll get ourselves some gas and then we'll go and try to get the drive again. We shouldn't have any fuel leaks. We have the correct size of fuel line. We have adequate sealing now because we put the correct float in. The only thing that I could think of that might leak on this is down here on that adjusting screw. I kept the adjustable screw in for the carburetor so that way I can really fine tune it in, but put on the choke, well, give it a bit of ether first, wherever the heck that went. There we go. Get some of that in there. That soak in. Gas cap on, oil cap on. Give her a whirl. Helps when the ignition key's on. I would think that might help. That's the best that sounded at idle in a while. Holy cow.
The next day.
So guys, you're gonna have to please forgive me for the fact this is now Thursday. I have been yesterday I fought this mower the entire day with literally just loss after loss after loss after loss, and I had to stop, otherwise it was going to literally drive me through a wall. But the mower runs. It will drive, but it is belching fuel out the carburetor like there is no one's business. I have redone the seals inside. I have done the seals on the bowl of the carburetor. I've cleaned the whole thing out. I've checked vents. I've checked valves. I've checked seals. It just keeps on putting too much fuel out, and now it kind of might be fixing itself. I'm not 100% sure, but if I try to throttle it up, it's getting way too much fuel. I have a carburetor coming. I'm not sure if it's going to be here till about Thursday or either tomorrow or Saturday, I believe. But I'll kind of show you guys what it looks like down here. It's really hard to get the grasp on what's going on with this thing when each corner I try and make, it doesn't really seem to work. Of course, now it won't be leaking when we actually are trying to show what's going on, but around the edge of the bowl is where we kept having a lot of problems where the fuel just started seeping from the top, meaning that the float is not properly shutting off the valve to the fuel. The only thing that I could think of maybe how to divert that problem is, also excuse the train, but to put a shutoff valve on the fuel line somewhere where I can reach it without burning my hand off, and then I could just regulate the fuel. But if that's what I have to do, then I guess I'll do that down the road. For right now, though, we had to put in a different carburetor screw from my previous model because while I was tightening the other one, of course, the other one just snapped right in the middle of the thing, so I had to take it out with a screwdriver. But I did also put in a brand new throttle cable, and I also repositioned where my throttle cable clamp was, because if I didn't, the carburetor, I think it might have been pushing on that lip, so it would help with the unsealing process. Showing the whole intake and exhaust system in its entirety. We've had the muffler fixed around where it's just these two bolts that now hold it in. That's hot because you know when motors run, that's kind of warm. But I chopped off the back bracket because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to run that throttle cable right through where it's at right now. Everything's fine at this point. If I pull it, it technically should start, but it just doesn't want to seem to do that. I'll give it one last chance because it's not leaking anymore and I know it's got fuel. So if it just needed to tune itself, then maybe that's all we needed to do, but let's give it a few pulls and see whether or not if it starts, because if it starts, I'll just put back on the air filter and I might have literally just fixed it by staring at it. I hate this thing. I hate this thing with a passion. First time this thing is driven in quite a long time. Keep the throttle loose. Kind of does. Alright, I'm gonna go take it for another quick drive. I'll let you guys know what happens. We'll see you back at the whiteboard. And after that quick little test drive back, I kind of still have my glasses on today. We got ourselves our checklist. So we did install the coil. That part is done. Wow, that was the worst line I've ever made in my life. Hang on. Okay, let's try that again. So we did correctly get our coil installed. We also had our drive pulley that we had installed. We did get the drive belt and the air filter along with the fill oil. That part is the simplest things that we had to do to make 56 run. 56 though still has its goal of running and driving. It runs and drives. I need to tune this carburetor. It's down to the carburetor. We fixed that and this whole thing is ready to go to phase 2, which is that body work. Getting the seat mounted properly on top of the cover and getting the cover properly cut out so that way the motor fits adequately under the hood. I'm still gonna call this iffy, not even gonna really write anything on there because the running and driving I won't know until I put the new carburetor on later this week. I kind of ran out of time and we've had multiple days invested in this project as is, but we're looking at it on the bright side. The motor runs, the mower drives, it needs tuning. If I can tune the current carburetor that's on it, I could technically start phase 2. But I got a new part coming to hopefully fix the rest of those problems so we can literally just start focusing on only the body. The motor is no more of an issue. So that's going to do it for part 1, guys, or should I say phase 1 of Project 56. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope to see you guys again on our next segment. Hopefully that means the mower will be running just fine and then we can cross this off the list. But be sure to also check out the Boomstick Club from all the up-to-date content from me and the gang. You guys already know who's in it. I shall see you all in the next one. This is the Rental Man out. Peace.